First, I want to thank everyone for coming. What a great crowd. What a great day to kick off this 1,000 cubic foot per second electric pump station in Gibson, Louisiana, right here on Elliot Jones Canal. This was designed by GIS, constructed by Sea Level, funded by the state of Louisiana for $10 million and Terrebonne Parish for $6 million. But before we get started, I'm going to ask Mort Black to come up and lead us off in a prayer.
Thank you, Arden. Please bow your heads for a moment. Lord, we recognize your presence here today. We thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed upon Terrebonne Parish, our leaders, those at the state, those local, the contractor who built this facility. We ask your blessing on all of this, and we ask your continued blessing so that this parish may progress as it has, and your will be done in all things. Thank you very much.
God bless. And Mr. Sue, a veteran of the Korean War, is going to lead us off in a pledge. The flag's right over here, Mr. Sue.
Pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which
stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And a round for Mr. Sue, a veteran, and all the veterans. And he is the longest sitting member on the levee board from day one, and he's one of the reasons we got as far as we got. Thank you, Mr. Sue. Now, with that, I'd like to name the elected officials here, and we have Representative Beryl Amity, Clyde Hammer with the school board, Chief Corey Henry, Steve Pondville, Public Works, Mike Toops, Mort Black, Dana Artigo, Joyce Seahan, which is director of the pump stations, Clay Nakan, Scotty Dryden, Cohen Guidry, Fred Trowbridge with Steve Scalise's office, Christian Bergeron with Congressman Graves' office, Mr. Sue Henry, Reggie Dupre, director of the levee board, Angela Raines, Tony Alford, president of the levee board, and Mitch Beaumont, who is the project engineer of the Morganza to the Gulf. Council members, Darren Guidry, Carl Harding, John Amity, Danny Babin, Dirk Guidry, and we have from Sea Level, the contractors, Joe Marcella, project manager, Darrell LaBeouf, Kevin Passman, Kathleen Rodriguez, Lloyd Gibson, from constable of this area, Norman Porsche, Roddy LaReal with recreation, O'Neill Marlbrook, engineer on this with the rest of his crew from GIS, Chip Klein, who is now with GIS, was head of CPRA, and Trey Middleton, Joe Chauvin, Philip Aback, Chris Janice, Dwayne Villian, and we have Joe Harrison with the Juvenile Detention Center for Terrebonne Parish. Thanks, everyone, for coming out here. You know, this project started in 2017 to permit it. Graciously, the state, through CPRA, through Chip Klein, Governor John Bell Edwards, put up $10 million. Terrebonne Parish put up $6 million. And we started on this huge project, and then came along COVID for 2 years. Then came along Ida. And so here we are in 2023 finishing this project, but it was no fault of anyone except the supply lines. It was hard to get supplies. But while we were building this, we were building numerous other projects at Terrebonne Parish, which we've been breaking ground or cutting ribbons on. And everyone, the parish president in Terrebonne or any parish is no good without their department heads. And I've got some of the greatest department heads, and they really care about Terrebonne. And please give them a round of applause because they made this happen. You know, the workers in Terrebonne, we've progressed their pay. We got them up to more standards than what they were being paid before. A little something about it. Well, on the west side of the intercoastal, there's three drainage systems. All the way to the east is the 11B, which goes all the way to Thibodeau. And that drains, from Thibodeau all the way to 182 by Senactoin. The other drainage system, the 11A, which we just broke ground on, a pump station and a retention area there, that's the 11A. This is the Chacahula Basin. So that's the three drainage systems that keep the west side of the intercoastal dry. And the Chacahula Basin is 108,000 acres, and it drains everywhere from Westgate to the lakes, to Donna, to Shreva, to Gray, to Chacahula, to Bar Black, and actually Summerfield pumps into it. So it drains the majority of the homes in Terrebonne Parish. So our quest that we started in 2017 was to build 3 pumps like this. We built one on Hanson, which is completed 3 years ago. We built this one, and we are on Bar Black off Geraldine Road. We have a federal grant for $12 million. We have the permit. We do have the permit to go ahead and from the Corps of Engineers, which is a major step, and then the parish has to put up $3.2 million, and that's what we're in the process of raising, is $3.2 million so we can get started on that 3rd pump station. Remember, these stations was in the MRT report 40 years ago, the Mississippi River Tributaries report. By the Corps said they needed to build this, and of course they never did. We took it upon ourselves, and we moved forward, and as you can see, this is the second. Now, the first one kept up with the Chacahula Basin pretty good. We kept it down. It took us a while. With this, it's going to be twice as fast. Between this pump, this 1,000 CFS, and the one at Hanson, which is about 5 miles south of here, it could pump 1 million gallons every 1 minute if all 8 pumps are running. So this will drain. Remember, all the Chacahula Basin, it covers Assumption, Lafourche, some of St. Martin, St. Mary, and most of Terrebonne in this area, and Lafourche. And it all drains into Bar Black. That's like a big manifold. In other words, the manifold all feeds Hanson, Elliot Jones, and Bar Black is where we put in the 3rd pump station, so you understand how this goes. And, another problem they had in the Chacahula Basin, the water was stagnated because the intercoastal's higher, so it wouldn't drain. So it wasn't helping your vegetation growth. Now it freely flows because you do get water off Bayou Buff through the Morgan City Canal. So with this, we've progressed, and I want to thank GIS Engineering that built Hanson, and we took what we learned from Hanson and we incorporated this with 2 1.75 megawatt generators, all electric panels. Please take a walk through there when you get a chance, and it's air conditioned. And you got 4 900 horsepower electric motors that are driving 60-inch pumps that flare out to 68-inch. And this has this can pump 1 million gallons every couple of minutes. And like I said, it took us from 2017 to now. Sea Level done a lot of jobs for us. I want to thank the folks from Sea Level. And the manager of Sea Level, if he could come up, I'd appreciate him saying a few words.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Passman with Sea Level. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I was thinking this morning that I might have to get up here and say a few things. So looking at the posters here, we've been very fortunate to build quite a few of the pump stations for Terrebonne Parish, as well as Lafourche and St. Mary. It's a local workforce doing great projects to protect local people. So I think it's good for the community. It's nice when a local company can land some of these big jobs and keep them on schedule, right before hurricane season. So we appreciate it. We look forward to the next pump station down the road. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm honored to call up Chip Klein. You know, Chip was on CPRA, the executive director of it, when we got the $10 million. So Chip, please come up. And look, let me tell you something. Morganza to the Gulf without this guy, Garrett Graves, the Governor Bobby Jindal, Governor John Bell Edwards, and others in this standing here, this wouldn't happen. Morganza to the Gulf, which this is part of Morganza to the Gulf. This is actually pumping outside. So with that, Chip Klein.
Thank you, Gordy. You know, as Gordy just told all of you, I'm no longer with state and CPRA, now with GIS engineering. But over the last few months, I've really taken some time to reflect on where coastal Louisiana is today compared to where it was when I found it. And I think every person underneath this tent that lives in Terrebonne Parish ought to take some time today to think about where Terrebonne Parish was 7 or 8 years ago when President Dove came into office. And you heard Gordy stand up here and he gave credit to pretty much everybody underneath this tent, from legislators to his staff, to his department heads, to his levee district, to the private industry. But what President Dove has been able to accomplish during his time as Terrebonne Parish president, quite frankly, should never be forgotten. Because if you look at what President Dove has done from a coastal restoration standpoint, from our barrier island restoration to our marsh creation projects, to our flood controls, our pump stations, our hurricane protection projects, that's what elected officials in this state should be doing. Not being political hacks or political talking heads, but people who want to get things done. And over the last few years, there's been miles of barrier islands constructed under President Dove's leadership. There's been thousands of acres of marsh. There's been pump stations like this constructed all over Terrebonne Parish. There have been miles of levees, numerous floodgates, all done under his leadership. And tremendous leadership from the levee district level, from Reggie and Tony, and all the members of Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District. And when people who work at CPRA at the state level see that type of commitment from the locals, we take notice. And it forces us to take action as well. And so when you have an elected official like Gordy who prioritizes this issue, things start to happen. Not only from the local level, but from the state level and the federal level. And by us prioritizing Morganza to the Gulf, we now have over $400 million in federal funds for a project that was authorized in 1992. And so this is what progress looks like. And this is what happens when we all work together. And I'm just very proud to play a small part. But Gordy, you're never one to toot your own horn, so I'm going to toot it for you. But you've been a tremendous leader for Terrebonne Parish, and it's been great to work with you over the last several years. So thank you.
And it wouldn't have happened without that guy right there. Chip's been there every step of the way. Before him, Garrett Graves, our delegation, and we've moved forward. Now I'd like to bring up Tony Alford to say a few words. He's president of the levee district. That's when I was elected as a state rep 19 and a half years ago. I nominated him, and then Governor Kathleen Blanco appointed him as levee director. Tony?
Thank you, Gordon. Another big step for Terrebonne Parish. You know, it's nice. We're pushing along with Terrebonne and Lafourche. Has been really effective. You know, you hear from people every now and then. It kind of wears you out a little bit about, man, all we think about is flood protection. All Gordy thinks about is that, and that is so far from the truth. You know, all these projects that Gordy has accomplished and all these things that we've done as far as levees and pump stations, this stuff should have been started 30 years ago or longer ago, and it wasn't. So there was a whole lot of work being done to catch up for what we didn't do in the past. And Gordy was pretty damn easy to follow because it was always, what's the next project? And he makes all of us look good because he really has his heart and soul in it. And what a legacy that he's going to leave behind when Terrebonne's not underwater, when we get these rains like Houston gets, and you see what happens. I bet you there's not another parish or county in this country that can handle the rain like we can, since all that work has been accomplished that Gordy put in place, and of course Morganza and all those levees. And again, pat yourselves on the back. You know, without those taxes that you paid, you know, that gave us a real good starting point. And of course Chip and Garrett and all these guys, it really helped to put our money where our mouth is. And it helped us to sell this thing in D.C. when we were there. And I think that's why the Corps finally showed up, right? We built this, and now they're showing up, and it's great to be working with them. They're really, Colonel Jones is phenomenal, and colonels before him. So kudos to Gordy Dove, and thank you, Gordy, for all you've done.
Well, kudos to everyone here, and I'd like to bring up next Reggie Dupre. I served with Reggie when he was a state senator. I was a state rep. We were both chairmen of Natural Resources. When we started with CPRA, we both sat on CPRA representing the Senate and the House, and we were over Natural Resources, so we kind of cheated a little bit getting most of the money, but it paid off. But with that, y'all know Reggie's been here. He's director of the levee board, and it's been an honor to work with him and Tony all these years, and the levee board, Mr. Sue, and everyone. So, Reggie.
Thank you, Gordy. You know, I got an old friend of mine that told me, knowing that coastal protection and restoration was my top issues and priorities. So, you know, also President Doves said, flood control, he told me, is a sport that you only take score for a loss. Now, the press doesn't care if we have a 10-inch rainfall and nobody floods in Bayou Black. Nobody's going to pay attention. You just move on with your business. Y'all remember 5, 6, 7 years ago, a 4-inch rainfall flooded hundreds of homes, and you know, about 10 years ago, I remember. Now, it's an inconvenient afternoon. That's all it is, another summer day. We had, if you have a 9-foot tidal surge for a hurricane, back in 2005, 11,000 homes flood. Now, virtually nobody floods. We're getting the same tidal surge. We hope, this is a legacy we've all done, but as people may not pay attention in the future, because we're going to be joining the rest of the country where these issues are not going to be issues anymore. And I want to thank you for your leadership over the, you know, in friendship for the last 20 years, Gordy. I mean, I remember that phone call right after you got elected and about 5 votes with your landslide. And saying, Reggie, I see your priorities and we will have the same priorities. I said, well, I'd love to have the partnership. So thank you so much.
By the way, that was 5 votes, but it was 4 more than I needed. So, and then 12 years later, Jerome Zarang won the same seat by 6 votes. So your vote does count. And, you know, another thing I want to bring up, this is our 30th pump station since I've been parish president that's actually, that's going under pump. So we have another 5 that's under design and construction, but this is our 30th one. We increased the CFS of Terrebonne Parish from 10,000 to almost double to 18,500 CFS that we're actually pumping right now in Terrebonne Parish. And we are going electric because there's no maintenance. But as you can see, if you really get a chance, take it, these are 1.75 megawatt generators each. So if this power over here to the right with energy, if we lose it, we don't miss a hit. You know, another thing we did, but we put 50 pump stations out of 100. We have 98 in Terrebonne Parish, and we put 50 out of 98 in on telemetry and SCADA. You could be in New York City and you could start and stop them, and the rest of them are automated. We put 24 pump stations working with the council, and we put 24 pump stations with generators. They had electric pumps here that was 20 years old that had no generators. So when the electricity went out, you flooded, but that's no longer. And of course, we automated all of that, and I want to thank the council for working with us and moving it. And Mike Toops, our manager, I see him back there. And I noticed David LaBeouf just walked in. I don't think we mentioned his name. And Chris Janice. And, you know, you've got people living here like Mr. Lloyd Gibson, Mr. Jerry Cobb, and Tony Burgess, and my Uncle Sterling Marshy, who's depending on these pumps. They live on the Chacahula Basin, and I'm sure there's some other ones in here. But, you know, with that, my last speaker, I'm going to ask O'Neill. He's the engineering group that designed this, designed Hanson, plus many others, to come say a few words, O'Neill.
Well, thank you, Gordy. One of the issues is, I know when Gordy first got elected as a state representative, we had did a study when Jim Ernie was head of the levee district way back, I think 35 years ago, about doing a project on Bayou Black. The levee district took over that, Gordy and the levee district took over that project. As y'all remember, we had a high river. I think 4 or 5 years ago, the previous administration had started a little piece of it. They came in, and before the river got high, we had it completed to 7.5 feet. So that was the start. Once you build the levees, you got to get the water out because the waters can't get over the levee. And so we had to get these pump stations built right away, and it looks like we've accomplished that. So, Gordy, thank you all for your effort. Tony, the same thing. Again, for 30-some years, I had a plan in my office, waiting for somebody to fund the project. Mr. Lord, you remember those days when we first started? I was here when the water came over by Black 182, Highway 90 in those days at Greenwood School, when the river came up in '73. So the water was here, and we finally dealt with it. From 311, all the way from 311, all the way to Highway 1, this system drains. So in Lafourche, Assumption, St. Mary, and Terrebonne Parish, that whole basin is now under pump and can be dealt with for just about any kind of rainstorm we have. So thank you, Gordy. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And then also I want to give a shout out to Jules Abad, his firm. They did the land acquisition in this area. And I tell you, if you think getting land from people is tough, it's very tough. You know, people don't, we try not to expropriate even though we can. We try to work it out with the landowners, and Jules and his group did a great job of acquiring the land in this area. And before we cut the ribbon, I'd like to do one thing. I'd like y'all to give a round of applause to Tony, Alfred, Reggie, and the levee board for the 98-mile Morganza system that they're building that we're protected by, please. That's tremendous what was done. I mean, you know, they're going to be starting the lock system, which is $360 million, which is BP fine money. Any day now, we waiting to go out on the streets for bids, and that's going to give a lock system and stop all that high water and fresh and salt water from coming into Terrebonne Parish. And so with that, please, everyone, come over here. We're going to cut the ribbon. And then we're gonna start up the pumps one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got it. Cut.